Okay, so today we're doing a deep dive on something that's pretty complex, but also I think pretty important to understand. We're talking about blockchain. We
Blockchain.
got a whole stack of articles and research here,
Yeah,
and we're gonna try to break it down
absolutely.
so that anyone listening can really grasp what this technology is all about and how it works.
I think what's really interesting about this is, this is one of those technologies that really has the potential to kind of reshape the way we think about trust, especially in the digital world. And not just in finance, which is where a lot of people kind of first hear about blockchain,
Right.
but really way beyond.
Yeah, and I think that's what we really want to get into today. I mean, I think a lot of people, when they hear blockchain, their eyes kind of glaze over. It sounds really intimidating.
Yeah.
But, we're going to try to make this as clear as possible. We're going to go, beyond that kind of simple analogy of blockchain is like a digital ledger. Because honestly, that only gets us so far. Right. It doesn't really explain the real power of this technology.
Yeah.
So let's start with like a basic question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever wondered, like, how is it possible for a system to be completely open?
Yeah.
Where anyone can see all the transactions, all the data,
Yeah.
but at the same time be incredibly secure?
Right. And that's where this concept of cryptography really comes in. And essentially what we're talking about is every block in this chain of transactions has its own unique digital fingerprint, you could almost call it.
Okay.
And this fingerprint is created using a very specific formula or algorithm.
Okay.
And even a tiny change to the data would completely change that fingerprint.
So it's like if someone tries to sneak in there and like tweak a transaction, it's going to be obvious.
It would be immediately obvious. Yeah, you'd know that something had been tampered with because that fingerprint wouldn't match up. And this fingerprint is what we call a cryptographic hash.
Okay.
And it's that hash that links each block to the one before it, creating this chain. And so it's this really clever combination of this cryptography and the way that the network itself is structured that makes blockchain so secure.
And when you say the way that the network is structured, you're talking about it being a distributed network.
Yeah.
I see that term a lot.
Exactly. So rather than having all of this information stored in one central location, which as you can imagine would be very vulnerable.
Right. Easy to hack.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
With blockchain, you have copies of this blockchain spread across tons of computers all over the world.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, imagine like a shared Google Doc.
Okay.
But on a massive scale.
Yeah.
And anyone can join the network and get a copy of that blockchain. So that makes it virtually impossible for any single entity to control it.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. That makes the security part click for me a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I'm also seeing a bunch of stuff in these articles about consensus mechanisms.
Oh, yeah.
What is that?
That's a great question. So that's how the network actually agrees on which transactions are legitimate and which ones should be added to the blockchain. So think of it kind of like a voting system.
Okay.
But instead of people, you have all these computers that are running these complex algorithms to essentially come to an agreement.
So different blockchains could use different methods to reach that consensus.
Exactly. There are different types. One that you've probably heard of is proof of work, which is what Bitcoin uses.
Right.
Which is very energy intensive. And there's another one called proof of stake, which is considered a little more environmentally friendly.
Okay, interesting. So it's even within blockchain, there's all these different kind of subcategories and variations.
Yeah, it's a constantly evolving space. There's a lot of experimentation happening, which is exciting, right?
Well, and that kind of brings us to, another point I want to talk about, which is all of the potential applications of blockchain beyond cryptocurrency, right? Because I think a lot of people, that's the first thing they think of.
Right.
But in doing this research, like I was reading about how blockchain is being used to track tuna.
Oh, yeah.
From the ocean to the table.
Yeah.
Which just blew my mind.
It's pretty amazing. And it's a really great example of how blockchain can bring more transparency and accountability to supply chains, really.
Okay.
So imagine you go to the grocery store, you want to buy some tuna.
Yeah.
With a blockchain system in place, you could scan a code on that can of tuna.
Wow.
And you could see the entire journey of that tuna from the moment it was caught to the processing plant to the store shelf.
Wow.
And so that helps combat things like illegal fishing. It helps ensure fair wages for fishermen, and it gives you as a consumer a lot more confidence in what you're buying.
Yeah, you can actually see like where it came from, how it was handled.
Exactly.
That's amazing. So it's really, we're talking about, way beyond just buying and selling digital coins.
Absolutely.
It's like this whole, like, building a new foundation of trust almost
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
for like all kinds of transactions and information.
Yeah.
And another thing that I thought was really fascinating was the potential for blockchain in voting.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because we hear so much about, problems with elections and security
Right.
and, all of these different concerns. And it seems like blockchain could potentially address a lot of those issues.
Yeah, it's definitely a promising area.
Right.
I mean, because the data on a blockchain is basically immutable, right? It can't be changed.
Right.
So imagine a system where votes were recorded on a blockchain.
Yeah.
Tampering with votes would be incredibly difficult, if not impossible.
Right.
Results could be verified almost instantly. And the whole process would just become so much more transparent.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously there are challenges.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a magic bullet. There are,
Yeah.
logistical challenges, social challenges
Right.
to implementing something like that on a large scale.
But it's exciting to think about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so last question, and this is a big one. After going through all of this research,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you think people should really take away from understanding blockchain? Like, what's the key takeaway?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that, blockchain is more than just a technology. It's
Right.
really about changing the way we interact
Mm-hmm.
and the way we trust in a digital world.
Yeah.
It's about giving individuals more control over their data. It's about enabling new forms of collaboration
Yeah.
and creating systems that are more transparent
Oh.
and equitable.
So whether or not every industry is, revolutionized by it remains to be seen, but it's definitely a force worth understanding. I think that's a great place to end it. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive
Yeah, this was fun.
into the world of blockchain.
Absolutely.